Hi everyone, Stepan here. I'm gonna show you my round 2 game from the Vrsar Open. So in round 1 I won against a 1600 something rated opponent. In round 2 I'm facing my friend Damian Horvat. He was staying at the same place, Vlatko's place, with me. And this year he decided to bring his girlfriend. So, obviously couldn't focus on chess completely. I don't think it's a good idea to bring your girlfriend to a chess tournament. So I've been preparing. I expect he hadn't prepared at all for the game. It was a morning round, and we have a history, Damian and I. The first time we played, he beat me, and then the second time we played, I was crushing him, but it was a draw because I had an impending intestinal requirement. That's a story for another time. And then the next time we were supposed to play, he didn't show up. It was a morning round, and he said that, he couldn't sleep, whatever. He was afraid, so, he didn't come for the game, which I will never forget. So this time we're playing, I'm hoping he's going to show up. And again, I have this family thing going on, so I want to play chess. I don't really care about anything else. So I started with d4, and Damian plays many things, but mostly he plays the modern, and he did play g6, the modern. Now, there are many ways to play against this. You could go e4, you could go knight f3, you could go c4. There are other moves as well. In any case, he played g6 and offered the draw, which, I mean, is fine considering he wants to go, to the beach with his girlfriend, and that's fine. But I wanted to play chess, and I declined. So I have introduced this new rule that unless I think I'm worse, I'm never gonna accept or offer a draw against anyone who isn't a GM or an IM. And I've had many, many, many draws during the last 9 years, even when I had better or equal positions against stronger opponents, simply because I was afraid to lose half a point. So, I would offer a draw and they would accept if they were worse, or they would decline and then even go on to beat me. In any case, Damian offered the draw. I smiled and thought a bit and declined. I wasn't really thinking about whether I want to accept or not, but about what I wanted to play. I ended up playing c4. And as you're going to see in the Pula Open, we just finished recently, I had the exact same opening played against me, and I had improved on this game. Now, here is the issue. When I play against the King's Indian, which Damian might get into, I don't like having my knight on f3. And the reason I don't like having my knight on f3 is because I play the semi-Averbakh, or I play the same-ish now with f3. So my knight on f3 is sort of in the way. Therefore, I can never play knight f3 as a normal waiting or developing move, because if he plays d6, knight f6, bishop g7, I'm in a King's Indian, which I don't like. I mean, I could play g3 and the fianchetto, but that's not what I like to play. In any case, bishop g7, I played knight c3. And now, of course, after d6, e4, if he plays knight f6, I'm in a King's Indian that I like. I could go bishop e2 into the semi-Averbakh, I could go f3 into the same-ish, and it's my territory. And here there are a couple of moves Black could play. There's knight c6, there's knight d7, and there is e5. Now, e5 is the critical move, I think, although knight c6, I'll just show you knight c6. This is what I've been preparing for my opponent in the Pula Open. I could go bishop e3, and then after bishop e3, e5, d5, knight c7, something like g4, or c5. g4 is the way to play against f5, because if g4 now, then f5, gf, gf, and queen h5. And there's a ton of theory here. Black could play knight g6 or king f8, and I know these lines inside out. However, when I had the same position in the Pula Open, I had decided to play what I think is an improvement to g4, I played c5. And as you're going to see, that game was very, very interesting. c5 immediately puts pressure on d6 and basically threatens to exchange the bad f1 bishop with bishop b5. That's one of the main points. So that's knight c6. If black goes knight d7, then definitely bishop e3, e5, d5, knight e7, maybe knight c5. G4 is playable for white, bishop d3 is playable for white. It's a normal position. But Damian played e5. And I hadn't been expecting this because, well, firstly, it's an invitation into a very dry position. Of course, I could take the c6, the c7 pawn hasn't moved, so there are no tricks with queen a5. And if bishop takes, then that really doesn't make too much sense for black, because I can go knight f3 and the bishop needs to head back or take on c3. So most likely after d5, d5, queen d8, king d8, and f4, this is a theoretical line where if this pawn is taken, then bishop f4 with pressure on c7 and long castles to come. Therefore, on f4, black really shouldn't take. Black should play knight c6, and now just knight f3, maybe knight d4, bishop d3. It's a position. It's a normal position, but the queens being traded off, I think, favors white. So on e5, I did not take that pawn. I can also, as I said, play knight f3 and go into a, I don't even know what to call that, a normal King's Indian if I play d5. But I had decided to play the main move d5. And after d5, Damian played a move I have never seen before, and the worst part is I couldn't understand the idea at all. So the way to play this position usually is either to play a5, followed by knight d7, knight c5, or to strike with f5 straight away. And, if f5, ef5, gf5, queen h5 check, king f8, black is perfectly fine here. The knight's coming to f6. The king is slightly misplaced, but this bishop is going to come to life. I could play f4 straight away. So that's one way to play. The other way to play, as I said, is a5. You could also start with knight d7, preparing a5 and knight c5. You can also play knight e7, supporting f5, after which, white could go g4 and we get those lines I've shown you previously. But Damian played a6. And I had no idea what this move does. It seemed like a complete waste of tempo to me, because b5 is under white's firm control, and, it always just drops a pawn. So I had three candidate moves here. When black plays a slow move in the King's Indian or in the modern or in the Pirts, basically in this structure, h4 is always a good idea. And on h4 I wasn't really sure what black was supposed to do. If you turn on the engine says white is significantly better and black's best move is either f5 or h5. And if f5, white just continues h5. And this seems pretty scary. What I didn't know how to evaluate properly was h5 here, and I didn't like the idea of allowing the dark squared bishop trade. This is a common idea in the King's Indian, with or without h5. I wasn't really sure what to do here. I was going to play bishop e2, which seems like a normal move, and then, bishop h6 comes, and I just didn't want to trade those bishops because this bishop is stuck. Not that bishop h6 couldn't come anyway, but it's slightly risky to put the knight on h6. The other candidate move was, of course, bishop d3. And on bishop d3, if f5 is played, then black is completely losing. ef5, if bishop f5, I can just trade and go queen h5, and there's no way to defend the f-pawn. On king e7, I take on f5. I don't have bishop g5 because the f6 square is covered, but you get the point. This is just busted. Black's position makes no sense. So on bishop d3, f5 does not work. But I was afraid of knight d7. And let's say I go bishop e3, knight e7, I don't know, now probably queen d2, which seems like a normal move, and now f5. And this is a completely different story. Now I don't want to take, because ef5, gf5, I probably have to play f3 or f4, probably f4. Now I could also play f3 straight away, and then I don't think f4 works. Black should castle, knight g2, f4 now, bishop f2, I don't know. I'm gonna play for c5, black's gonna go g5, g4. Seems like a regular position, but slightly weird. And I played a suboptimal move. I played bishop e2. Now, the engine says bishop e2 is the best move, but don't ask me why. I have no idea why. If black plays correctly. Now, black should not play f5. Damian did play f5 and they didn't punish it. So bishop e2 prevents f5 in pretty much the same fashion bishop d3 does. However, bishop e2 is the best move, I think, because after knight d7, you can go knight f3 and go into a normal King's Indian type of position where if f5 is played, ef5, gf5, something like knight g5 gets played, and then bishop h5 comes, and you still have the queen to support the bishop. So I think this is the answer. However, Damian played f5 straight away, and now white has an advantage, if white plays correctly. I did not. The correct way to play is, of course, ef5. If bishop f5, then you are close to winning with g4. The bishop needs to drop to d7 or c8, let's say c8 to give the knight a square, and now h4. And this is supposed to be a massive advantage. And if ef5, gf5, then bishop h5 is a big advantage. King f8, and now just knight g2 or bishop e2, the king is misplaced, the queen isn't offside, this isn't going to be a clean tempo. So yeah, that was the way to play. However, after f5, I didn't want to go into that, and I played f3. And now here's the issue. The issue is, black can play f4 straight away, and my bishop's going to be stuck for squares. My bishop needs to be challenging the c5 square and supporting b4, c5, so it needs to be on e3. Black can play f4 immediately, and black is significantly better. So let's say f4, bishop d2, a5, and now the same plan of knight d7, knight c5 gives black an advantage. Another problem with f3, in conjunction with bishop e2, is that now I do not have a square for my knight. I want to go knight g2, that's the setup. But now I'm going to have to move the bishop again. So f3 was just an absurd move. And I don't even remember how much time I took. I must have spent a couple of minutes, not a long time. I don't recall thinking here for too long at all. I remember thinking about h4 and thinking, okay, h5, bishop h6, and bishop d3, and I thought, okay, he's not going to go f5. And then when I decided to play bishop e2, I hadn't analyzed f5 correctly. In any case, knight d7, he didn't play f4. So now I played bishop e3, and I think the position's equal now, because on f4 I can just drop my bishop back to f2. But now he plays bishop h6, unfortunately. And I don't want to take, because the knight gets developed. So I played queen d2, and my assessment of this position was perfectly equal, which is correct. Damian played f4, and here I made a mistake. So I was thinking, if queen f2, that prevents queen h4. If queen d2, queen h4 is possible, but after king d1, king c2, obviously g3 hangs a pawn, because the rook's hanging. But after, you know, queen d2, queen h4, king d1, I couldn't see an issue here. There is an issue here. The knight's coming to c5, and this pawn is moving forward, and that's not going to be simple to defend. Black can also play knight h6 and knight f6 to support g4 many, many, many times. So this is slightly better for black. The engine gives it as minus 0.5. However, after queen d2, Damian played knight gf6, which is suboptimal, and I played bishop d3, which is fine. That's, you know, the only move to to develop my knight. And here he played c5. And I started laughing because, I mean, he's my friend, so that's okay. c5, in my mind, was trying to force a draw, because when c5 is played, c6 cannot be played, and b5 has been prevented. So the only idea black has is g5, g4, which I can put under firm control. So, you know, I was laughing, and I thought that c5 was a fine move, just not ambitious. However, after analyzing the game, and you know, after the game I told them, you know, I'm not going to take, I'm not crazy, because I was afraid of knight f8, e6, d4, so I'm not taking that en passant. However, when I started analyzing this position, I realized that dc6 gives white a massive advantage. So let's say I take. Okay, black needs to take back. And now I castle. So the best move for black should be knight c5. Should be knight c5. The engine says knight c5, and after knight c5 or castles, white has a significant advantage, but it's, you know, it's playable. If he plays knight f8, then black is almost losing. Bishop c2. Now, of course, knight e6 drops a pawn. And how are you going to defend that pawn? King e7? I don't think so. If king e7, then c5, and that should be the end of the game. d5 just hangs material, ed5, cd5, rook e1, and there's no way to defend this. On knight d7, I have c6. So knight f8 wouldn't have been possible. So dc was actually an excellent move. However, on c5, after seeing knight f8, e6, d4, I didn't even consider dc. I just continued developing. Knight g2. Damian castled, and now I began to feel worse. And I was right. So I played my next move, rook b1, and offered the draw. Damian accepted, but I felt like if anyone's playing for an advantage, it should be black. Because what do I have here? I have a3, b4, followed by c5. Okay, that's my plan. So rook b1 prepares b4. a5 shouldn't be played, I think, because, you know, it gives up the b5 square. However, black can play g5 straight away. And I had no idea what was going on here. I was going to play h3, and now something like knight h5. This looks awfully scary. The engine says black is just slightly better, but I felt uncomfortable. So when we finished the game, we both concluded that, you know, I can play for b4, he can perhaps play for g5, but it's not clear. And definitely it's not. White is perfectly fine. It's very close to equal. However, from a human perspective, black's plan is way more dangerous than white's plan. So, you know, I was happy with the draw, and I was slightly worse, so the draw offer was fine. In any case, 1.5 out of 2 after 2 rounds, and Damian got to spend the day with his girlfriend after all. Thank you for watching. I'll show you round 3 tomorrow. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.